All right, so now we are back for the scientist part of this, where you get to really play and
yes.
and have fun and experiment. Not that any of it's not experimenting. So you want to have your original dye bath. You want to have a couple more containers. It can be more bowls. I am going to use these little glass mason jars just because we want a little bit of it for dyeing, because we're only going to put like 1 or 2 bundles in here. And just to demonstrate to you. If you are using little jars, a funnel would be great as you're pouring it in here. And potentially some little eye drop pipettes to help put some of these other materials into your new dye bath. So we're going to show you how to take the original dye bath and change colors by adjusting the pH level. So we've talked about pH level multiple times in these videos, and how dye baths are very susceptible to the pH level that you have. So to reiterate, on the pH scale, pH neutral is 5 to 7. So we had tested my tap water here. It was 6 1/4, which is in that pH neutral area, but we went ahead and used distilled water anyway. We could have used the tap water. If you are on the pH scale 1 to 4, your water is more acidic. If you are on a pH scale 8 to 11, it's more base or alkaline. So that's just a quick chemistry lesson. So we're going to adjust this by adding different items to move the pH scale of this dye bath.
By starting in the middle, it's neutral. So it's not acid or alkaline. And we can then add different items that will move it closer to acid and closer to alkaline, which is going to change the color. So we're going to play with that scale, that 1 to 11, those numbers, and get some really cool different tones and hues out of this dye bath, which you've seen, and at this point is purple with some brown undertones.
So the first thing that we're going to do, we have 3 jars here, is just pour a little bit of this dye bath, and this is for demonstration purposes, so you can see the color variation, into our middle jar. So that's the pH neutral jar.
Yep. Got it?
You want to hold that one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. This might be, do we want maybe the bigger funnel?
Yep.
All right.
Start with the big one.
Don't trust myself. And this is where, I can't see.
Yep, good.
This is where, again, make sure your surface is covered, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty much a hot mess when I do this stuff, and I get stuff everywhere. So make sure you have your surface covered and your gloves on. So now we're going to pour some of this in the left jar. Good.
Yep.
And we'll modify that in a minute, and then some on this jar. And you can obviously, again, do this
A little more.
in bigger containers. We're just going to demo it in these jars. Move this aside. There you go.
All right. So the great thing about this workshop, and we want to say that from start to finish, is that everything is easily accessible and non-toxic, natural. So again, use your safety equipment. We have rubber gloves on, or latex gloves on. We've protected our surface. But the things that we're going to use to move our dye bath on the pH scale are things you probably already have at home. And if not, they're really easily obtainable.
So again, this is pH neutral. We have the purple. All right, so there are, like DeeDee said, various non-toxic household type of items that you can use to adjust the pH level here. And this isn't necessarily just in dye baths. I mean, you can use this to adjust pH levels of food and processing and stuff like that too.
Absolutely.
So if we have a jar that is more acidic and you want to move it more towards the base, you can use baking soda. You can use chalk. You can also use soda ash, which is something that a lot of dyers do use. It's a form of soda, which I do have some, but we're going to just demo with some baking soda. If you want to move it more on the acidic side, we're going to use lemon juice. You can also use vinegar, but we don't like to use vinegar because of the smell of the vinegar. Lemon juice smells...
It's a personal thing.
Right. So you can also use vinegar to move the pH scale on this.
And there are other things out there that will do this also. So like chemically type of things, you know, don't don't think that you're limited to these. If you're willing to branch out and try those things, like think about your pool, you know, and you're throwing different chemicals in to keep the pH balance and change the pH balance in your pool. But again, these are the ones that are easily obtainable, non-toxic. You probably already have them.
Yeah. So I'm going to use lemon juice, and it already has a nice little thing. What we would recommend is start with a drop or two if you were using a liquid, or a quarter of a teaspoon or something. And these we're going to use probably a lot smaller because this isn't a lot of liquid. If we were using a dye bath in one of our bowls, we would probably use a quarter of a teaspoon.
Yeah,
so
use a lot more additive.
It's best to start with a little because you can always keep adding to it. It's really hard to go backwards. So start with, in this case, with the lemon juice.
We are literally going to change the color of these dye baths.
So I put a drop or two in here. So it's actually turning a little bit browner.
Brown. We have paper.
So let's show, let me cut these up, so some strips. So,
oh, yeah.
This turned, it definitely turned a brown, and there's actually a pinky purpley undertone. I don't know if that camera actually picks that up. And as this is absorbing into the paper, that purple is coming out like really hard here. So let me stick this here. And that was literally maybe a drop and a half.
Right.
That was all it took to change this from that really dark indigo purpley color to a much lighter, and
like,
it's really turning
now it's
nice.
like mauve purple. Like mauve's not the quite word, like eggplanty, I think.
Yep, so that's how you can change it. So one dye bath, you can have multiple colors for it.
Yes.
So,
and we don't have to stop there. If we wanted, we could add another drop, stir it, dip our paper, and see what sort of colored dye bath we have.
right. So let's come over on this side.
So this was the acid side, and now we're gonna go towards the
Or do you want to
alkaline
just stick it out
side.
with that?
I'll do this, but I'll
very little,
stir
yeah.
it. Yeah, like this.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking like this is such a small amount of dye bath, so we are gonna top that in there. What do you think?
It looks more on the redder scale to me, but we'll have to dip the...
So we're gonna dip it, and we'll dip it, and we'll see about adding another bit. Oh, it's pretty similar. Oh no, it is a bit redder.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see on the camera, but we can see in person, and we'll take some good photos and insert them as a still so you can see the difference in these purples. Do you want to add a little bit more and just see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this one it's more on the pinker side. This
Yeah.
one is more on the bluer side.
Right. And again, so we're just gonna put the same amount we did before. It's hard to get such a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. We're like mad scientists. Oh yeah, it's like more razzleberry almost.
Did you see what he did when he did
Yeah.
the brown?
Mm-hmm. There, yeah, so look at how...
So the interesting thing about logwood, which is one of the reasons why I think we both like it, it always has this brown undertone. So you get some variety. You'll see that brown color kind of peek through the other pigmented colors. And that's what I think is amazing about logwood.
Yeah.
So let's try on this side. Let's put
Yeah, we're
another
gonna
drop.
keep going. So it can be subtle, and then you can get really drastic changes. Sometimes when we've done like a cabbage, we get a blue, or we can get, that undertone's gorgeous.
So I don't know if the camera can pick that up. No, it's pretty light. But when I wiped away some of that, the brown undertone just like popped through. And I think we're gonna go,
yeah,
much
there,
more brown.
see?
So it is pulling now the brown with now a purple undertone.
Right,
so it
it's like reversed.
flipped it, which is gorgeous right now. So that's the variation on that one.
And so I was saying, like in the cabbage before, we've gotten teal and green, red, and blues, all from the same dye bath. So
yeah, so depending on the dye source that you're using, You can go from blues to purples to reds. I mean, it really does change sometimes, and again, it depends on the dye bath. You can get some green undertones as well. So now this is turning more purple. It was brown at first, but I'm picking up a lot more of the brown on this card.
These are really staying in that purple tone.
Yep. So then the next thing that you can do, so this is changing the pH level. There's also other modifiers that you can add to your dye bath to change the color yet again. And one of our favorite ones is rust water.
Yes.
I keep a container of rust water, I use it periodically to create a rust bath for things. I've had this container for several years, and I was just telling DeeDee I can't even open the jar anymore because the jar's lid is rusted shut, so I had to drill a hole in here. So we're gonna have to pipe it out the rust water from the inside. But rust changes the color generally to a more browner tone. It will mute it down a little bit. It's just a more muted color palette with the rust modifier.
Now it's also a mordant. And so we used that term earlier, and that is a chemical, or not chemical, but a medium used to make things more permanent, make your dyes more permanent, and more light fast, so that they don't fade out in the light. And now again, don't leave your stuff in direct sunlight ever, because that is like the mother of all. It's just gonna bleach stuff. But when Tina uses the word modifiers, it's so perfect because there are so many different things that come into play when we're doing this. The pH balance of the water, the dye stuffs that we're using, your mordant of choice. And in this case, now the rust water, which is also a mordant, which will help make things a little more permanent, but it also acts as a dye bath modifier, changing the color.
Right, so I think we're gonna first actually put the iron in the normal dye bath just to see what it does. Let me
give it a good shake.
Cover the hole, shake it up.
Oh, and do you want to say how you made your rust water?
Sure. So all I did for this, and you can't tell it in here because it's pretty rusty, is I put some rusty nails and screws and just little rusty bits that I found in my walks. Put some vinegar in here, filled it up, and closed it up. I mean, it's that simple.
Me too.
And I just sits in my garage, and it cooks all the time. It literally has been cooking for probably 2 years. And that's not gonna work. So
okay,
edit that out.
give us a moment. One of the other modifiers too is what kind of pan or pot you cook your dye stuffs in. So if you start with stainless steel, that's probably pretty pH balanced, although don't quote me on that. But a lot of dyers will have a copper pot or an aluminum pot, both of which are going to make your dye stuffs react differently. And they also, again, act as a mordant. Those metals, as they sort of cook into the dye bath with the dye stuffs and the water, it's a steadfast mordant. It's
I need to drill another hole there.
All right.
So I just poured some of the rust water into a cup. So again, start little. You can keep adding more. So I'm going to add maybe a drop or 2 or 3. And then we'll stir this up.
Ooh.
It looks like it turned a little navy.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it definitely made it bluer, or a bluish steel gray, which is a gorgeous color.
I know. Don't put anything else in that.
Yeah, that's really, really pretty.
We are like done Tom Turkey. We're going to both dunk our bundles in here. And that's so really, and I think it is probably a little bit hard to see on camera, but we will take some photos and insert them as a still so you can see all these different. These purples are nothing like the original dye bath. So we've got very like almost blue but very brown undertony purples. Then these are a bit more
like
red.
A berry color.
Yeah, raspberry kind of, yep. And then this just moody gray is right up my friggin' alley. Like, I'm probably gonna put my biggest bundle in there.
Right, so what we would say is play with it, get to that point where you have a color that you think is really cool, stop, stick a new bundle. Well, first of all, you want to take it Probably put it back on the stove in your pots and simmer it till it's warm again. You want that dye bath to be warm again. Then put your new bundle in there that you have soaked, just like you would have soaked them before. Put your bundle in there and do like you did with the original dye bath. Let it sit overnight, and then the next day, go ahead and pull it out, rinse it out, and you're good to go.
Yeah. Now the original dye bath was did simmer for an hour, but this time you don't need to go that long, just until it's warm again, so that it helps the fibers loosen up and pull in that color.
Yep. So have fun experimenting, and again, we can't see what colors you come up with.
Yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. Let's get bundles.
Yep.